happening. The mic can hear your thoughts, so think of things. Zoom room. What are your thoughts on phone growth? You don't get sick of we need to extend. For this south band is Northern Oregon. But it like so here's Washington, right? Here's Eastern Washington. So the band cuts this. So it's as far south as like Tacoma. It's 57. No, that's the bottom.
I don't know. So
you need to go somewhere that is above the city and away from the city. Okay, if you're getting presented with the if you're seeing the you need to sign out of PCs to use Adobe, that's fine. Just sign out of the oldest one because we're limited to I think 4 computers. So anyway. All right. Remember, I see there's a chat. I see now. Okay. We're in the Zoom room. We're happening. It's live. It's permanent. It's forever. Let's talk about 8.2 and the next little bit. Some improved selection tools that I want to show you. The importance of layer orders. And then we're going to add a little bit of shadow to make our composition all the more believable. So if we open up our progress from yesterday's Zoom room at least, it should look... Don't look at it yet, actually. Everybody close your eyes. It's a secret. Okay. This is the end result that we're gonna end up creating here. So pretend it looks like this, because this, oh, that's the text tool. Be gone. This looks something like this, because this is where we left off yesterday with our duck masked out, placed on our dune. And now we need to add the palm trees and a little bit of extra fun stuff to make this into a believable composition. So to select the palm trees and bring them into our composition layers here, we're going to go File, Open, the same way we opened up the duck, so that it happens in a new tab. What you'll notice is that it's not a locked background layer because this is also a TIFF, a tagged image format. Most of the time, other raster file types like a PNG or like a JPEG are going to have a locked background that you'll need to do Control-J. I only bring this up because it's important to check your layers are editable and in the correct sort of happenings before you start doing too much destructive work on top of it. So we're going to try a new selection tool today, or I'm going to at least demonstrate a new selection tool today. If you click and hold on the selection tools, you'll see there's this magic wand right here. The magic wand first needs a layer to be selected. So I got to click on layer 0 here, turns gray. The magic wand is going to behave very similarly to the quick selection tool because it's going to make guesses based on what you want it to focus on. So if I click on this like kind of silvery blue on this cloud, it's going to look for other examples of that exact silvery blue and try to select it as best it can, which is cool. But if I go to click on maybe this more sky blue, this more traditional sky blue, it's going to change my selection, but it's missing out on some of the white pixels here because it doesn't know how to guess that. All right, for sure. I'll just click the white pixel. Oh man, where'd all my selection go? Whenever you're selecting something with the magic wand tool, you have to hold Shift in order to make sure that you're selecting multiple things at a time. And what you want to do here is hold Shift and click around until your kindergarten cutout line is along the edge of the horizon and pretty close to the trees. So you want to click in the white space here. You can tell that it's pushed up in the correct side because it goes all the way to the edge of my pixels here. I'm missing out on some data over here, so we'll just shift click a couple times in that region, shift click a couple times in this region. I'm going to turn my pointer on so you can see a little bit better. We're going to, what happened? Let me do my magic wand. There we go. Shift click a couple times around here, over here, just to try and get as much, oops, that was too much. Try and get as much of the trees as possible. Okay? So I've got a selection made. The magic wand is a little bit more refined in the way that it has a better ability to tell the difference between different contrasting edges, different like amounts of pixels. It can see some of these finer details along the edges here. But if I go to make my mask, dang it, my trees disappeared. Nuts. Okay, so what we're gonna do instead, there's two ways you can get around this. You can either invert your mask. If we look right here, we've got a lot of white window and not a lot of black background. The white window is gonna be revealing a lot, which is revealing a lot of these sky pixels right here. But I have a pretty nice cutout made of my trees. So to do that, I'm just gonna click on my mask thumbnail, hold Control and press I, and it's gonna flop the black and white values on my mask and instead cover up everything that was previously visible and now show everything that was previously invisible. But we've got like some pretty nasty screenshot resolution remainders of our palm trees here. So we're gonna need to refine this mask a little bit. In order to do that, we're gonna imagine that there never was a mask. Before you delete your mask, this is very, very important so that you don't lose the magic wand work that you just did. If you hold Control and, hey guys, hold on. If you hold Control and click on a mask, it will reselect everything that mask is covering. So like if I go to my duck layer here, let me bring my ducky TIFF open real quick. We'll make a quick selection, do some real fast because I thought this was a Photoshop document. Some real fast editing and masking. There we go. All right, so if at any point I lose the selection that I made for my mask, I can just hold Control and click, and it's going to reselect that same thing that the mask is hiding, that the mask is covering. If I Control click on the pixels, it's going to do the whole thing. It's going to make the mask disconnect from my my previous sort of situation. So by Control clicking, I've reselected my stuff here. Sam and Drew, you guys are in the wrong spot. What's going on? Okay, sounds good. So we need to refine the selection. And to do that, you need to have two things activated. You need to have some marching ants on your screen. You need to have some type of kindergarten cutout happening. And you also need a selection tool enabled. So that's any of these three, as well as the marquee tool right here. As long as you have one of those in your hand, so to speak, in your cursor's hand, you can click on this button right up here called Select and Mask. And what Select and Mask does is it takes us to a whole new window that is dedicated to masking. It probably looks something like this for you guys. What you want to do here is focus right here on this very top rectangle that says View Mode. You want to change this little view. Click on the drop down and set it to On Black. The second one underneath Overlay. It's going to do that. And it probably looks something like this for you guys. You want to crank that opacity up to 100%. And what that does is it shows you the parts of your mask that are currently set to black, that are currently going to be in the background, not visible in the foreground, that are filled in with white right here. So, does this make sense? At least a little bit. What you do once you've gotten it set up into this manner is there's a second brush right here called the Refine Edge Brush tool. Because we're in the Select and Mask window, this is all dedicated. This is basically hitting the NOS on selecting, okay? Your Photoshop is now more tuned to making accurate selections. It's looking for deeper, more specific levels of contrast, and it is a much better tool for making a refined mask before you start doing any extra compositing. With this Refine Edge Brush tool, this is a brush that's designed for using like, if you're trying to mask out hair on a model or fur on a pet photograph, or maybe grass or fronds like we're doing in this composition style here, it's gonna look for those very, very small changes in contrast and make a closer selection, getting rid of some of this extra sky blue that's peeking through some of our fronds right here. But the way that you use this tool is not like a paintbrush. You use it more like a hairbrush. And you want to start in the center of whatever you're hairbrushing and imagine you're brushing it out from the scalp to the end of the hair. So if my scalp is right here and the end of my strands of hair are this way, I'm going to click and drag along the fronds to brush out. You see I'm following along the stem. Let's pull a little bit down that way, pull a little bit down this way, and I'm clicking and dragging the whole time. You can see what's starting to happen in the back there. The blue pixels are turning white because they're becoming windows. They're becoming see-through, and it is refining our edge on the background here. I'm going to bring some of the tree trunk back, palm tree trunk. Have a little bit here. Just brushing out lots of palm tree hair. Brush, 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 brush. All right, starting at the middle, working your way outwards along the frond, clicking and dragging, trying to get rid of a lot of those excess blue pixels on the back there. So we want to keep this beach data. There's some weird stuff going on with my my mask has got some transparency issues, I see. Okay. So I switched back to the regular quick selection brush, which behaves exactly like it does in the other Photoshop. We want this part to be see-through. We want this part to be pixelated like this because we're going to keep it for our final version. So it makes sense when I click OK. So once you've gotten as much of the blue pixels out as you can, such as this, you want to click OK. And what that does for us, since I was selecting on the wrong layer, 1 second, you shift click. Let me try something real quick. Oh, I didn't want to do that. I made a destructive edit just there. Okay, cool. So control click, sorry, hold on, pause for effect. I'm gonna delete this. I just wanna delete it. So now you can see by going through select and mask, if we go back here, we can see the pixels that we actually wanna keep. This is what it's supposed to look like. Refine edge brush tool. We're gonna hairbrush that information back in from the center. We also wanna go down the trunk so that the trunk is included. We want some of the beach. Come on, refine that edge. There we go. You can brush from the strand back to the scalp if you really want to. I mean, you know how well that works when you brush your own hair though. So ideally, you want to go from high concentration of a certain color pixel, like the green and the yellows here, to a low concentration around the outside edge, making for some equilibrium like you do in chemistry. So you can see there's a great example of it right there. It brought a lot of the special little frond details back in without including any of the blue from the background. So when I click OK, and then I make my mask, I'm missing out on some data here, which is fine because I can take my brush, set to white, create a white window, and bring some of that information back in. Clicking and dragging with white because we want to keep the up until the horizon before it turns into clouds. Let me turn the hardness up on this. So I'm just painting with white. Going general to specific, using a smaller brush for the specific portions so that I don't go too far. I want that hammock strap back in there. But there's still a lot of blue pixels here. See, this is the bitmap in action. You can see the bits are being mapped. Hit X to switch to black. We're going to turn this back into pixelation so that I just keep the little, what would you call that? Strap holding the hammock onto the tree. So we want to bring some data back in, switch X to switch to whites, bring that coast back in, bring some of this tree trunk back in, bring some of this pixelated tree trunk lost back in, paint, paint, paint with lots of white paint. Paint, 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 paint. Paint, 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 paint. Okay, so I got a little bit of blue, so I'm gonna zoom in, make my brush smaller, hit X to switch it to black. And I'm just gonna try and click away those blue bits from my bitmap here. And your end result should look something like this, where you've got transparency going on in the in the background, in the clouds, but the trees and the ocean and the hammock and the beach all remain. And what we do next is Control C that on over to our duck dune situation, and it's going to come in just like this. All right. This is what transparent pixels always look like. This is what your Illustrator artboard is composed of, because when you copy and paste it over, they just turn invisible and take the color of what is underneath their screen over there. So what we do next, click and drag this over to one side and hold Shift. Oh, take our move tool, hold Shift, that's Control. So click and drag this and stretch it out so that it covers the width of our dune and also the height of our dunes like this. I'll give you guys a second to get yours looking like mine, and then I'll show you the last couple steps you need to do to get your duck in a more believable sort of position. What's up? And then shift click in the sky. Click it until you get a selection like around the edges of the trees, but not much. Just keep shifting. That's how you work with trees. You want those? So that you had it right. Control Z, because I found along the edge of the little point. These are little pinkers that you can slicing out. So when I can drag that, I'll switch to those. I know. Okay, out there. Okay. Okay, so you should be all right. Let me help you again. Okay, what's up? Okay, no, you're good. So make the mask again. Instead of this is a great mask. You just have to swap and companies. So hold Control and credit. Okay, so I'll have time to answer some more questions here in a second. Thank you guys. The Zoom room is still live. It's still recording. I can still hear you. So the last thing we need to do is to make a second duck and add a little bit of shadow so that it looks like this could be a photograph instead of a composition. So this duck, hold on, I hear the questions. I will help you in a second. Let me finish showing you and then I can help you. This duck is going to be out at sea like this. I'm going to leave it back there, kind of off to the side in this manner. And I'm going to Control C, Control V, another duck in, that's going to sit on the beach. But because I want it to sit on the beach, the layer order has the palm trees in the front. It means I need to either bring my palm trees down or my duck up. Those do the same thing. I'm going to drag my duck up. So I got my duck here. This duck's a little bit closer to us. Think back to the design environment where you had a foreground, a midground, and a background. I'm going to make this duck a little bit smaller, a little bit more person-sized. And I'm going to go up to Edit, right here, the second option. Oh, I forgot to commit my transformation, so I'm going to hit Enter. I'm going to go to Edit. Where is it? Transform. And I'm going to flip it horizontally. Now my duck has switched gears, turning around. Now we're going to add a little bit more information to make it look like it's believably standing on the beach. So if we take a look at this, the light on the background of our composition, this is something that you want to plan for when you do future compositions. The direction of the light is the easiest way to make your composition look either very believable or extremely fake, right? Because if you get lighting going in two different directions, think about art in general. Think about if you've taken studio art or studio graphic arts. If you've got light coming from two different directions, it makes it not believable or less believable than it would be if this were an outside scene with one deadly laser light source hanging out in the sky. So if we look at the shadows on the palm trees, you can see that they go this way and they are quite long. So if we're using some old Galilean physics, it's probably not Galilean, but that's just what I remember. There's probably a light source over here, we're imagining, and it's probably either pretty bright or pretty low, given how long these shadows are. With this duck not having a shadow, it sticks out like a sore thumb, It looks like a sticker that someone put on a scene, because that's not far from what has actually happened to this duck here. So we're going to add some shadow. And you do that by clicking on this button right down here next to the trash can, the add the new layer button, which is going to put a new layer right on top of the whole situation that has nothing on it. Turn all this data off. This is layer 4. It's blank. She ain't got nothing. So on layer 4, this is where we're going to paint our shadow. And you do not have to be an art master. You just kind of have to think about how a shadow works. Shadows in real life are not 100% opaque, right? They're not completely blocking out all the light. They're filtering some of it. It's bending and bouncing around you. There's a little bit of transparency or lowered opacity. But before we get into any of that, we need to paint up our shadow. So if you think about duck's probably that long, maybe it's got a curve to the shadow because of the tail. We're painting with black paint on layer 4 because this is going to become the shadow for our duck. You want it to follow the general kind of contours of the critter that you're masking out, like this. You want to take smoother, longer strokes because it is something that is a smoother, longer sort of build. But if we zoom out, that looks nothing like a shadow. That looks like trash. That looks like black paint that we put over a sticker on a composition that's looking not bad so far. In order to get this to look more like a shadow, there are a couple different things that we can change. I can move these pixels around because it's just like a big splotch of paint that we've created here. But the first thing we need to do is get it so that the duck is casting the shadow. And we do that by clicking and dragging this layer 4 right underneath there. Now we've got a little bit more believability. The duck is in our full view. Our light source is over here somewhere. The shadow is naturally, according to earthly physics, going to go this way. But since earthly physics are not 100% opaque on their shadows, we're going to lower the opacity of this shadow layer pretty significantly. And look what starts to happen. It starts to get quite a bit more believable, right? Now we're kind of getting somewhere. And we can make some adjustments. Maybe it's a little too big. Maybe we want to squash it. Maybe we want to rotate it. You can make some small adjustments here or there. Pull it back this way. Wow. That duck's got a real shadow. It has to be real. It's blocking the light the same way that the palm trees are. This is the skill that comes with compositing. Once you learn the masking and the selecting tools, is you start to understand how the light moves and how the light will behave. And that will allow you to create these more realistic, realistic in quotes for this example, but more realistic in the sense that it could be real. It could be a setup that you took a photograph of instead of a thing that you made digitally. If you find that your brush, let me do something real quick here. If you find that your brush is not, actually, just kidding. I'm going to rephrase that. There's a measure on the brush called its hardness. If I set my brush up here to 300 pixels, you'll see this little icon that looks like a star or like a white ball or like a glowing sort of situation when you have the brush tool enabled. When you click on that, it takes you to your brush options. If we look at our brush right now, it's got a 300 pixel size. You can tell that by the cursor. And it's got 100% hardness. What do you guys think 100% hardness is going to look like when I click in the white space? It's going to look black. Okay. That is correct. 100% hardness has 0 degrees of blur across the radius of the circles. Bear with me on the math terms. If we look at this little example right here, we've got a center point and we've got a radius out to the edge of the circle. 100% hardness sets the blur value along this edge to 0%. You can also think of 100% hardness as 0% softness. It's going to be exactly a hard, opaque edge like this, as if it were a dit on a die, right? But if we set that to 100% hardness, 100% hardness is 0% blur. What do you think 0% hardness is going to look like? Kind of a trick question. It's going to be white. It's still going to stay black, but think about this affects how much blur happens from the center. So this is no blur. We turn that down. Before I click, what do you think it's going to look like? Did you guess that it was going to have this very soft blur? These are exactly the same size. Both of these are 300 pixel brush strokes. But since this one has a hardness of 0%, it is blurred 100% from the radius out to the edge. So if we stack these two on top of each other, or let's use a different color so I actually can stack them. Okay, take my brush tool, just set it right in the center there. You can see the hardness happening. That's how much it's going to blur. Look at that. So these two brush strokes are exactly the same size, but the red one is blurring 100% of the way across the radius of the shape here. So I'll pull this off to the, oops. I keep forgetting these don't behave like Illustrator objects. These are just actual paint on a canvas here. So what 50% hardness, 50% softness looks like is just a little bit of blur. It's halfway blurred across the radius. We're going to set that to, we'll go kind of a nice green. There we go. This is the mid-ground between the two, 50% hardness, 50% softness, pretty typically what your brush strokes are going to look like. All right, and I'll put this as an example in Canvas. And the reason I show you all this is because if you're going for something that's hard to see, something that's not clear, like a shadow, like a reflection, like a pane of glass, like a cup of something, like a liquid, you want to affect the hardness of your brush by making it softer. 0% hardness means 100% softness. So if you think about the literal terms of the words, it's what we're looking like. Okay, sorry, I'm talking a lot. So let me go back to my 8.1 here. If I wanted to make that shadow, oh, okay, that was scary. I'm gonna hit D to go back to my default colors. If I wanted to make that shadow a little bit easier to blur off the jump, I'm going to turn the hardness down to something like 27 to 25%. This is pretty big. This is a little bit much. And then I'm going to paint. Look at the difference between the example I said earlier. Look at that. It's quite a bit more shadowy, quite a bit more kind of fuzzy around the edges, a little bit more amorphous, to use some fun big words. Going to paint some of that shadow out, kind of reconnect it back to the center of the duck a little bit. Maybe make it contour and curve up since light contours and curves. You can see it looks noticeably different that when I go to lower the opacity on this, has some quality of blurring out along the edges to make it just a little bit more believable. Something like this. Again, this is something that comes with time and with practice, but it is something I want to show you because it's a very easy step to start making your compositions look a lot more realistic. So your guys', when you're done, should look something like this. This is our completed project that's got shadows. You've seen some advanced masking tools. You've composited with at least 4 images, I think, if I can count. And it's ready to export and submit on Canvas. So I'll export this so that you know what you're supposed to be working towards. We'll wrap up the Zoom room, and then I'll help you guys with this with the remaining 20 so minutes. Sound good? Cool. Thank you guys for listening. It's longer than I expected.